Hello everyone, how's it going? Welcome back to an album review. This time I'm going to be reviewing The Powerless Rise by As I Lay Dying. Now, this might actually be my favorite album by As I Lay Dying, and for multiple reasons. I really like the instrumentation. I felt like they took everything that worked with An Ocean Between Us and kind of made it a little bit better in this album. Now, in the past, I would have said that An Ocean Between Us was a better record than The Powerless Rise, but when you really examine the two, I mean, the production on The Powerless Rise was an improvement, and I think everything else was an improvement, and I think An Ocean Between Us is still a really good album. I think The Powerless Rise is probably their best work, if you ask me. Now, of course, everyone knows all the crap that As I Lay Dying has been through, and, the new single that they came out with last June, I believe. And, yeah, so I figured I'd review this album. So, one of the things I do want to bring up about this album is that I don't think there's a bad song on here. That's not something that you can really say with a lot of As I Lay Dying's albums, especially their earlier work. Surprisingly, As I Lay Dying is one of those bands where their old work is their worst. I think their debut album, Beneath the Encasing of Ashes, is probably the band's weakest album, mainly because of the production and Tim's vocal delivery. I don't know. I could tell they were really trying to figure out what kind of band they wanted to be at the time, and I actually do like Frail Words Collapse as well. I think that's a better album than Beneath the Encasing, of course, but that's not what we're here to talk about. Powerless Rise, and it begins with Beyond Our Suffering, which is a hard-hitting song. I remember listening to this song back in the day, and I remember even loving it then. And it's a song that does hold up, I think, and I think it's one of the band's best opening tracks. Anodyne Sea is a pretty interesting song. It's a fan favorite on this album, and I can see why. It's very catchy. It has a very catchy chorus. And I know that, us metalheads kind of like to make fun of other metalheads for the whole breakdown deal or whatever when it comes to metalcore. But the breakdown in this song, I gotta say, is really something. And I think the way it was done very well. Now, if Tim Lambesis didn't, deliver vocals, this breakdown wouldn't mean diddly crap to me. But yeah, I mean, Tim Lambesis' screaming vocals, he really does know what he's doing when it comes to that, and I like the clean vocals in this song too. I think it's a catchy one. And I want to skip over Without Conclusion, which is a pretty decent track, and go right over to Parallels, which is definitely one of my favorites on this album, and it's, I believe, the #1 single on this album, and for good reason. It's pretty catchy. It's got a lot of great hooks in it, and yeah, I think it's one that you can't go wrong with. And if you're an As I Lay Dying fan, how do you not like it? So next up we got The Plague, which I think is one of the band's more underrated songs. It's another sort of hard-hitting song, you could say. Anger and Apathy, pretty interesting song, I must say. Maybe one of my favorites, but it's really hard to tell. I'm not going to say it's my favorite, but I think this is a pretty good song. I like the instrumentation and the chorus. The chorus is really something that can really pull you in, and I like the bridge area and the instrumentation. I think overall it's a great song. Condemned, I think, is a pretty good song as well. Upside Down Kingdom, hands down one of the best As I Lay Dying songs to ever come out. I think you can kind of consider this the title track to the album, because they do use this line in the song, "Let the Powerless Rise." And yeah, you can consider that the title track. Pretty interesting lyrics, and the structure to the song is really good overall. Fantastic track. Vacancy, This one is probably the weakest track on the album, but that's not saying much because I still think it's pretty decent. There's not much to say about it other than it's decent enough. The only constant is Change. Definitely one of the more underrated songs on this album. Probably one of the most underrated As I Lay Dying songs of all time. I really like Tim's vocal delivery in this track. It's outstanding stuff. The Blinding of False Light, which is the closing track, kind of a mediocre way to close an album because, you know, the kind of like, of course, you know, it is more experimental, and this is pretty common, especially with metalcore, but a lot of metalcore bands like to close off their albums with something that's a little more different. And with that being said, this track is a lot more different compared to a lot of the other tracks on this album. Like, they use some kind of distortion within the clean vocals, and I don't know, the flow to this song is pretty weird. Does it work as an album closer? Yeah, I think it does, but it's not perfect. So overall, guys, I think this is a great album. I'm going to have to give The Powerless Rise by As I Lay Dying a 9 out of 10. I think it's a great album. Like I said, it's probably my favorite As I Lay Dying album. Throughout the few years that I have been into the band, my favorite album from them has changed here and there. Some days it's Shadows Are Security, some days it's An Ocean Between Us, and some days it's this album. I think this is overall a very good one. And if you're someone who's looking to get your first As I Lay Dying album, definitely pick this one up. I think it's a great one. You won't regret it. Probably one of the best metalcore albums of all time. Let's just say that. And As I Lay Dying, of course, you know, they're one of the kings of metalcore. So, let me know what you guys think. What do you guys think of this album if you heard it? I'd like to know your thoughts. Thank you for watching. Have a good one, and take care.